When you touch me, crazy. I'm crazy the way you love me, crazy.
Prepare to experience the strongest radio allowable by law. Secrets will be revealed. Myths dispelled. From the studio gym where excuses never apply, it's Superhuman Radio with your host, Carl Lenore.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of Superhuman Radio. We're going to talk about something that's near and dear to my heart that I love talking about, and that's training today with Adam Tzur. And what he's going to talk about today, really, you need to pay attention to, because this style of training should be included in anyone's training routine. You can rotate it in, rotate it out. If making strength gains is important to you, and I started saying years ago, I haven't said this lately, but the reason I trained more like a powerlifter than a bodybuilding is because I'd rather be strong than look strong. My goals, and as a result, all of my injuries, detaching muscles, were because I pushed my body to see how strong it was. And it was strong. In fact, I never realized how strong I was as a young man because I never applied myself. But my strength increased geometrically because I learned to use strategies and techniques like the one we're going to talk about today. And I hope that you will give it a try. And, especially if you're struggling with the plateau, you just don't feel like you're doing what you think you should be doing or could be doing. This is going to be a very good interview. Before we get started, I have to thank our title sponsor, and that's Legendary Foods, makers of the Tasty Pastry, which started out as a replacement to the Pop-Tart and became so much more. It's delicious. It tastes like you're eating real pastry, flaky, soft, delicious, less than 1 gram of sugar, 4 to 5 net carbs if you're a low-carb guy like me, 20 grams of high-quality dairy protein. And now they have the sweet roll. If you have ever been in an airport food area, and that they have those beautiful cinnamon rolls, soft and hot and gooey and delicious. Well, the sweet roll is that, but it is again reimagined. Less than 1 gram of sugar. Again, 4 to 5 net carbs, 20 grams of high quality dairy protein, but tastes ridiculously bad for you. And they're not. So when you go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary, check out the tasty pastries and the sweet rolls. I promise you won't be disappointed. And keep in mind, they taste so good, your kids are going to want them. So you better hide them. Okay. And now without further delay, let's see. We have Adam Tzur. How you doing, Adam?
Hey, Carl. I'm glad to be back on the show. I'm doing quite well today.
Am I pronouncing your last name properly, Tzur?
Yeah, Tzur. Okay. It's a good pronunciation.
Okay. So you wrote an article recently about cluster sets. And these type of strategies allow you to increase volume. Volume is king, first of all. People that don't understand that, volume is really king. Time under tension is important, but time under tension for 1 rep isn't going to do the same as time under tension with 40 reps. So volume is king. But the problem with volume is you gradually get weaker faster and so managing fatigue is a big problem. But talk about cluster sets and how you started to focus on these and why.
Yeah, we originally, I wrote the article together with Brandon Roberts. He's a researcher at the U.S. Army. He's working with the warfighters and how to improve their performance. So back in 2017, we wrote the article originally about we want to figure out, can you make progress? Like, does more fatigue have to mean more progress? That was our original sort of interest in relation to cluster sets. So cluster sets are basically when you take a set, let's say you're doing 8 reps on the bench press, and then you divide the set into 2 pieces, like you do 4 reps and then have a 20-second break and then do 4 more reps. So you're doing the same amount of reps, but you're just adding a small rest within the set, so you have less fatigue, and then you can do all the reps with high quality. And the interesting thing is that now we updated the article now just a month ago, and the most recent research shows that you can make the same strength and muscle hypertrophy progress in the gym, but just with less fatigue by taking more rests. And for many people, this is counterintuitive, right? Because you think that you have to push yourself as hard as possible to failure, and you have to be exhausted after every set. And I also believed that before. But actually, the research shows that you can take breaks within the set, and that you still make the same progress.
So it's funny. I just talked about this 2 days ago on the show. Oh no, it wasn't. I was actually talking to a friend of mine who I used to train with. I'm sorry. The lines blur between what I talk about on the show and what I talk about off the show. So
yeah.
When I made my greatest gains in the deadlift, I was stuck at 405 pounds, 4 plates, and I tried a lot of things like pendulum deadlifts. I tried not touching the ground but stopping short of the ground and then returning back up, which did wonders for my back, the strength of my back. But moving more than 405 seemed to be a stretch for me. So what I did was I knew that back then I was doing 8 reps, 5 sets, 8 reps with 405. So I decided to start doing singles with 405. And I started out with 1 minute rest in between the single. And I did that for 2 to 3 weeks. And then I abbreviated the rest to 45 seconds. So I did 10 reps singles, 10 sets of singles, and then I condensed the time that I rested. And I continued to do that until I was able to do 10 reps straight continuously with 405. And then I went right up to 500 pounds in no time at all. It's amazing. But this is kind of an example. For some reason, a lot of us believe that if you're not crushing yourself, you're not doing it right. And I often compare it to work. If you were a construction worker, you have 8 hours to carry those bricks, mix that mortar, build that wall. So would you approach it like you want to be exhausted in the first hour? No, you pace yourself. You know, you work and you rest and you work and you rest in between. And before you know it, 8 hours is done and the wall is built. And I often think that we should start looking at training more like manual labor. Like, I don't want to crush myself. I have a goal. I want to get to that goal. And it doesn't require that I crush myself. What do you think about that?
I think that's an excellent point. And I think everyone who has been in the gym and trained and to the point where they can't progress anymore, to a plateau, everyone has felt that you're doing everything you can. You're trying to do more reps. You're basically just crashing your head against the upper limit, but you're not making any progress. You go back the next week and the same thing happens. You can't progress. And I think a lot of us, our sort of response to this is to try harder, right? We try to do more sets, and to a point, we try to do more reps, we try to do more sets, and to a point that can work. But the interesting thing is that if you, for example, I've been trying now recently, whenever I have a plateau, in whichever exercise, I just do as many reps as I can. Then I take a 20-second break, and then I do
2 or 3 more reps. Yeah,
in the
right.
cluster set. And then the funny thing is that the next time you're back in the gym, suddenly you can do maybe a rest, and maybe you can do 4 reps. And then you can cut out the rest, and without the rest, you can do 2 more reps.
2 more reps than you were able to before, right? Exactly.
Yeah, and the amazing thing is that you can do this without having to, grind through the last reps, and sort of your whole body is shaking and you have pain in your muscles and you're so tired and fatigued and everything, and you just take a rest, take a short break, add a couple of more sets, reps, and then it's so much easier. And it sort of mind boggles me that I trained for so many years. I would go to the gym and I would bash my head against the wall over and over again, but now looking at the recent research, it just isn't necessary for most people.
So I think this is a systemic problem because of the way we approach training. A lot of people work out. None of us in this audience work out. We train, and that means that we have progressive goals. Lift more, do more reps, do more sets, whatever it is, we progress. I know a guy who's been going to the gym for 20 years. He's still pushing the same weight. He's still, and that's working out. We're not talking about working out here. We're talking about people who are training with goals, progressive overload goals in mind. But I do think somewhere along the line, and maybe our ego, but I do think that most of us train with the intention of crushing our central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. Like we want to train until we can't. Like, remember some of the videos back in the day of Tom Platz after he trained legs, he collapsed. He couldn't get in his car. It's like that really isn't the goal. But we have been misled to think that is the goal. Now you take Mark Bell, my friend Mark Bell, he never tried to kill him, and he squatted over 1,000 pounds, but he never went to the gym with the intent. In fact, I showed him videos of me training. Obviously, I was training, really, really hard. And he said to me, I never trained like that. I never trained like that where I wanted to be completely exhausted and crushed at the end of the day. And so for some reason, rest is a bad word in training. Let's expand on this concept for a second. I find that when I was training, 1 day of lifting and 2 days off is when I made my greatest gains. But most people think that nothing is happening that will influence their progress when they're resting. Let's talk about the phenomenon. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, you're right on the money there. That you're building your muscle and making progress when you're resting, when you're eating, when you're sleeping, or not breaking down your muscle, because that's what happens whenever you go in the gym. You exercise, and that's a stimulus for growth, right? You break down the muscle, it has to rebuild. But it's easy to take that too far. Sometimes people think, okay, I have to make good progress, I should probably train every day, right? Because more is better. But again, I looked at some recent scientific reviews of training to failure. Basically, training to failure is when you do as many reps as you can until you can't lift any more reps in a set.
Concentrically, right?
Yeah.
Now, and I want to ask you a question on that. Stay with me. Some people say until you can't do that movement with good form, and some people say until you can't move anymore in that movement. Where do you think training to failure really is?
Yeah, researchers generally they distinguish between different forms. Some say it's concentric failure. Concentric failure means that if you're on the bench press, then you can't push any farther up. But you still have strength in your muscles, because there's the eccentric phase is then when you're lowering the weight towards your body. So for example, if you're doing pull-ups, if you have a concentric failure, you can't pull yourself up. But if you grabbed the bar at the top and then you lowered yourself, you could still do that. So you still have eccentric strength. But I think when we're talking about training to failure, I think the general accepted definition is that when you can't push anymore, when you can't do the bench press, when you can't move the bar anymore forward, then you've trained to muscle failure. Now, a lot of people do this. You're trying to push yourself all the way to the end. But if you look at two recent research reviews from 2021 and 2022, both of them conclude that you're not by going to absolute failure to the last rep, you're not making any more progress, but you're adding a lot more fatigue to your to your, not just in your training, but after your training. You're fatigued the day and the day after, maybe, because you chose to push yourself all the way on every set, on every rep. So
And then
it's
one of the first signs that you've done this too far, too long, is your sleep gets wrecked. You can't sleep well anymore. That's one of the earliest signs of overtraining, is disrupted sleep.
Yeah.
The other thing is a rapid heartbeat upon waking up in the morning. You're laying in bed, you're coming out of your sleep, and you feel your heart pounding. But I also want to mention something. We've done 2 shows over the years. There is no such thing as overtraining. There is undereating. There are a couple really, and I don't know if you're familiar with this concept, but there's a couple really good studies that showed that they were crossover studies, and they had a good number of participants. I can't even paraphrase. I just remember reading them, and the takeaway was, it's not about overtraining, it's about undereating. If you are compensating with the right density of calories and protein and fat, you're less likely to feel overtrained. Have you seen some of that research?
Yeah, we wrote a review about it, myself and Brandon, a couple of years back. We wrote a review about the overtraining research, and you're correct. Like, it's the problem with overtraining isn't that you're spending 100 hours in the gym and then you're exhausted. It's mostly that you're probably not sleeping enough, and there's also the emotional stress if you've stressed, and it's also the eating part, right? You're not eating enough, you're too stressed, and you're not sleeping enough. So that means that the body can't recover from the training, and over time you lose motivation, your sleep gets even worse, and it becomes a negative spiral. So this is what's so great about this concept of cluster sets, is that you can still make good progress. And for most people, this is more than good enough to make good progress in your training without having to be completely exhausted once you leave the gym. Now, you still have to train hard, you still have to push yourself, but you don't have to push yourself to the very end. And also, the interesting thing is, cluster sets, it actually came from not from people who were lazy. Originally, it was weightlifters, Olympic weightlifters I believe in the 1970s, who started to, maybe even earlier, they started to use cluster sets as a way to improve their form and performance in Olympic lifting competitions. So it's certainly not some sort of lazy technique. It's a way to maintain good form and to increase your volume without becoming so fatigued.
So the Bulgarians were the best at this.
Yes.
They would the Olympic lifters.
Yeah.
They would walk into the gym to a couple warm-up sets, do a heavy set, and then they would leave the gym. They'd go back to their dorm, they'd eat, they'd relax, and they would do that 6 or 7 times in a day. Now, obviously, I know what you're saying, Carl, I can't do that, I have a job. I understand, but this proves the point. When you flirt with fatigue, but manage it, you can get stronger faster. And if people would just start to understand this, we would see more people taking time off, but we don't. It's crazy to me. Maybe because I'm older now and I've found the sweet spot for my training. I mean, I'm adding muscle at 64 years old that I never thought I would. But I train for time. I do 3 movements for 20 minutes each. And as a result of that, I self-regulate the rest in between. And I don't do every single set to failure, because I know I got another 15 minutes of doing this. So I manage my fatigue, and I'm growing, and I don't feel crushed after my workouts. I just wish people would stop looking at the aberrations in physical culture. The guy who, squats until he can't walk anymore and he falls down and go, oh, I want to be that guy. And actually, the goal should be to develop strength without destroying your body. That's really what the goal should be. And that's where you start to look at techniques like this, like a cluster set. So let's talk about cluster sets, and let's look at a set of squats, right? So how if somebody's squatting 315 already, they're doing it for 8 or 9 reps, how do they approach transitioning to making it a cluster set workout?
Sure. So the easiest way, the easiest method to do it is simply let's say you're doing, you said 315 for the squats, you're doing 8 reps, for example. Now let's say you're doing that and you have a problem progressing. Every time you try to add 10 pounds, you can't progress. You have to drop a lot of reps and you never seem to beat that plateau. So the simplest would be to, after your 8th rep in your set, you re-rack the weight, you wait for 20 seconds, maybe 30 seconds, you unrack the weight, and then you do 1, maybe 2 more reps without going to failure. Or another way would simply be to do 5 reps, take a short break, and then 4 reps, so that you're adding 1 more rep, but you're making sure that you're not going to failure, and that you can do multiple sets like this. You can also even break it down further and do like 3 reps, break, 3 reps, break, and then 3 reps. So you're doing more reps in total for your set, but you're not as fatigued as if you were going to try to do 9 reps straight reps for the set. Then you would probably start grinding, your form would be terrible, and you may even risk injury because your body is shaking and all that stuff. So that's
think about it. You still have the same time under tension and volume, but you're just not crushing yourself with it. That's so brilliant.
That's amazing. When I started using this technique not too long ago, and it's so much easier to make progress. And now that once I'm finished in the gym, I don't have to sort of crawl back home. I can I just feel great. So of course you shouldn't necessarily do this technique for every set of every exercise during your entire workout, because the negative could be that it increases the time that you're working out because you're adding a lot more breaks. So I think it's something that you mentioned it earlier. You can use it strategically, and you can still do train to failure, but it needs to be a plan around it. You can't just go to the gym every day and just take all your sets to failure. You have to plan that this set is going to be to failure and these sets are going to be a cluster sets. So you balance it out.
And if we look back at the original 5x5, which was designed to build strength, not muscle size. Everybody needs, so because you got to stretch the fascia in order to get muscles to grow better and faster. And you don't stretch the fascia if you're just doing 5 reps. But what I want to say is you can take this cluster set. And, I learned this from Doug Brignoli. That he just passed away, sadly. But Doug and I had a conversation about volume. And he said, if you want to build strength, use a weight that you can only do 5 reps with, but rest longer in between, spend the time in the gym and do 20 sets that way. And it makes sense because I can take a weight that I would struggle with trying to do 3 sets back to back with a given weight and stretch it out and take a little and do it slower, take a little longer, and end up doing multiple sets more than I would have done. And I'm not fatigued. And you said something that reminded me. I remember a period in my life when I was my strongest. I used to train and I used to float out of the gym. I thought I felt so good after that training session. And I really did. I jokingly say I feel like King Kong when I leave here. I didn't feel crushed. Pay attention to that phenomenon. If you're starting to obsess about having to train the next day, because then I got into that. When I started to abuse caffeine, then everything changed for me. But when you're training and you're walking out of the gym and you feel great, be observant. What did you do the past week? How did you sleep the past week? What did you eat the past week? Because that's your sweet spot. Now you can increase volume and go slowly, but as soon as you stop walking out of the gym feeling like King Kong, that should be a message that maybe I got to back it down a little bit. And don't be ashamed to back it down. What's really funny, whether a team wins the Super Bowl by 5 touchdowns more or 1, they still won the Super Bowl. And you got to keep the goal in mind. If your goal is to get stronger and you find out that you get stronger by using more rest periods, what isn't that what you're looking for? I mean, who cares how you do it?
I think a lot of it comes down to things like ego. and you want to show both to yourself and maybe even to others who are watching that you're working out hard. And I think people, maybe I did it myself earlier, that I conflated being exhausted and going hard. I conflated that with progress. But that's not the metric that you should be tracking. The only metric you should be tracking is, are you making progress month per month? And also, how exhausted are you? Because it's not worth making progress if you're completely exhausted after every workout. So it's you want to make ideally you're making great progress and you feel good, like you said. That's the ideal situation.
Right.
So it doesn't have to be you. I think people have to start maybe question your own assumptions about training, that you don't have to be completely exhausted. You don't have to feel sore all over for it to have been a good workout. Then it's, again, training versus workout, right?
And I want to say something before we go into this break. Those of you who understand this are going to say, well, we know that, Carl, but there's a lot of people listening to this show for the first time. And we're all searching for anti-aging magic beans and all. Physical culture is anti-aging. The only research in humans that shows the ability to expand lifespan and health span in humans, not C. elegans worms and not mold and not rodents, but in humans, is the noble pursuit of strength and muscle. It's the only thing that prolongs life. In fact, I can tell you right now, women to 60 years old and men to 65 years old, the more muscle you have going into those ages, the longer you will live. It's been shown scientifically, and strength correlates with longevity. So we are talking about strategies to build muscle and strength, which will ultimately make you live longer. So categorize this as an anti-aging show at the same time, because I've said this before, many of you have heard me say it. Stronger is younger. If you're stronger today than you were last week, you just got younger. It's the God's honest truth. We're going to take a quick commercial break. Before we go, you can visit Adam's website called sci-fit.net, SCI-FIT.net, and he's got a lot of great information right there. You'll go there and read, and you'll be stronger. So check it out. We'll be right back with more Superhuman Radio. Stay with me.
Dogs should be powered by fat and protein, not carbs. That's why Visionary Pet makes low-carb, ketogenic dog food for dogs of all breeds and life stages. From kibble to freeze-dried and even low-carb treats, all Visionary Pet recipes are very low-carb, ketogenic, and made with 100% real meat protein. Shop now and use code SHR for 20% off your first order today. Your dog deserves the lifelong benefits of optimal nutrition. Make the switch to Visionary and see why smart dogs eat low carb.
P3OM from Bioptimizers is a patented prebiotic and probiotic supplement with Lactobacillus plantarum OM. It has now been upgraded to P3OM 2.0 with the addition of a superfood formulation that makes it 2 times stronger, as well as optimizes L. plantarum's strength. So it's more powerful than ever, which means that not only will it help you completely digest all animal proteins, it also reduces cortisol, causes deep relaxation and better sleep, and reduces stress. Go to shrnetwork.biz/P3-OM today and use the code SHR10 to save 10% off. Remember those rectangular toaster pastries you used to love when you were a kid? Well, Legendary Foods has just made them better. The new cake-style tasty pastry is like nothing you've ever had before. With 20 grams of high-quality protein and less than 1 gram of sugar, you'll feel like you're cheating, but you're not. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary and use the code SHR10 to save 10% off your purchase of tasty pastries. Now available in cookies and cream, red velvet cake, birthday cake, blueberry, strawberry, brown sugar cinnamon, and hot fudge sundae. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary and use code SHR10 today. Merrick Health is a premium telehealth platform that connects customers with partnered providers from the comfort of your home. Merrick provides concierge service with your very own patient care provider as your health advocate. You'll go over all your needs and goals, from improving sexual function, hair loss prevention, increased muscle, muscle, fat loss, and overall improved performance. Prescribed treatment options can be ordered and shipped directly to you if you meet the requirements, all from the comfort of your home. Go to shrnetwork.biz/Marek Health. That's MAREKHEALTH and order your comprehensives and get 10% off with code SHR. Don't forget to add the lab analysis to have results reviewed with potential over-the-counter supplements or treatment recommendations. That's shrnetwork.biz/Marek Health and use code SHR at checkout. Or order your own desired labs with code SHR and get 10% off your first lab order.
You're listening to the Superhuman Channel. We're ripped and we're ready.
Welcome back. We're talking with Adam Tzur. His website is sci-fit.net, sci-fit.net. So, are there any other things you want to talk about as far as cluster sets go? You have an article on your website, right, that people can go and read?
Yeah, we wrote an article that's a review of all the cluster set research as of today. And the article looks at everything from, we mentioned it earlier, strength, how it progresses your strength, how it progresses muscle mass. It's not, it's a good way to make progress, and it's also a good way to add fatigue-free volume. So you're doing more reps, you're doing more volume, but you're not adding much more fatigue with it, which is a great method. And it's used a lot if you're a more of an advanced lifter. It's used a lot for practicing technique, like if you're doing Olympic lifts, like snatch and such lifts. It's a great way because it also increases power, meaning
and safety, right? Because these Olympic lifters hurt themselves as their form erodes. Olympic lifting is all about form and execution, not about strength. And so they become sloppier, and that's when they injure themselves, and this will keep them from entering that sloppy zone, right?
Yeah, it applies, even also to regular lifters. If you find yourself that you're just you're not professional, but you want to make progress, you found yourself that whenever you're doing anything from a biceps curl to deadlifts to bench press, your form gets worse the more reps you do in a set, and you become more fatigued, and your technique starts to fail. And when your technique starts to fail, like you say, there's a greater risk of injury, especially when we're talking about things like squat or a clean and jerk, and even the bench press. If you fail during the bench press, you will be trapped under the weight unless you know how to roll the weight off yourself. But if you're doing heavy weights, it can be hard. So it's a very it's a way to practice your technique as well, because you do every rep has a more quality than if you were to sort of force yourself through the reps without any rest.
I was in Chicago traveling on business. This is probably 20 years ago, and I was traveling late. That I arrived at my destination late, so I went to the gym late, and the gym was empty. It was Bally's, and it was empty. It was the middle of winter, and I was training chest and shoulders, and I got stapled onto the bench one night. There was no one around. I looked around, and there was nobody. Like, I couldn't say, hey, can you give me a hand? And I had 400 pounds on the bar, and I'm going to tell you something. If you think rolling that down, I started rolling it by hand, and when it gets to your pelvis, holy crap, it hurts. Package is like, because of what you're wearing, is like it crushes your testicles and everything. I thought to myself, I will never do that ever again. And if you are worried about getting stapled to the bench because your gym is empty and you're trying to move up in weight, just leave the keepers off the bar, because the easiest thing is to lean the bar this way and all the plates fall off, and then the bar will just whip and come off of you. Obviously, make sure there's nobody standing next to you at the time. But if you're bench pressing and you're challenging yourself, and there's no time no way to react or ask somebody for help, leave the keepers off the bar. I'd rather be embarrassed about dropping 4 plates on each side, but than what I did. That was horrible. I would never want to do that again. I really hurt myself. I had bruises on my pelvis where the bar rolled over.
I know what you mean. It's very painful, and also, it's both physically painful and also mentally,
Yeah, I
because
know.
you're when
That,
people are
that was
watching, yeah,
that was the only saving grace, that there was what got me in trouble. There was no one in the gym, but
yeah,
I was happy that no one was in the gym watching this big oaf roll the weight off of him. So
yeah. But that's what's so great about, whenever you're going to failure like that, especially with heavy weights, and when you can be trapped under the bar, you should have. Well, it's not always easy to have spotters, but ideally, we have spotters. But sometimes you're traveling, or maybe your spotter couldn't come.
yeah, but
Nobody's in the gym.
a spotter is no guarantee that you're not going to be hurt, because if your
Yeah,
spotter's looking at the girl and in the short shorts, and he's not really paying attention, because that weight falls like this.
yeah,
What I see a lot of guys do is, a lot of guys like to bench press open handed,
yeah, yeah,
and that is ridiculously stupid. I don't care how strong you are and you've been doing it for 10 years, because it just takes one time that
Mm.
it rolls from this hand, that whole bar comes right down. And if you're balancing it so that you can stay open handed, it's most likely right over your neck. And I've seen bars dropped on people's necks. I've never found out what happened to them, but I got to believe severe cervical spine damage can occur from that. So,
Don't search for it on YouTube. It's extremely painful to watch, and it's called suicide grip for a reason. It's just I'm sure maybe I know some guys who are professionals do it, and they can lift big weights with it. But I think for most people, it's
Ronnie
very risky.
Coleman. Ronnie Coleman used to
Yeah.
shoulder press and bench press that way.
Yeah,
His hands were open. He had 315 on the bar. He was doing shoulder presses, but all it takes is a mishap of, you didn't grab the bar properly, your wrist isn't in the right place, and all it takes is one hand to roll forward, even a quarter of an inch, and the whole bar goes. It's very dangerous.
it is
And
dangerous.
I also think that bench pressing with a closed grip makes your forearm stronger. If you're really grabbing the bar hard, in fact, who's the guy? I had I'm going to forget his name now. Chris Duffin. Wonderful.
Yes.
Chris Duffin. He was on the show a couple times. And we talked about the fact that when you, he proved it to me. I went home and tried it, and it's true. When you focus on closing your pinky on that bar, if you think about your pinky, most of us are thinking about our thumb and our first two fingers. He said, focus on the pinky. Those other fingers close hard. But when you focus on your pinky, you're actually stronger. And it's the God's honest truth. And, they call him the mad scientist for a reason. Like, he figures a lot of stuff out. But Chris Duffin taught me that. Yeah.
That's interesting. I'll try that next time. Think about the pinky.
Also, if you want to increase your grip strength, you can buy those, the grippers, but the thumb is the weak part of the grip. That's why a lot of people do the hook grip, and it's painful. I've tried it. I couldn't do it, but they deadlift like Coach Wade deadlifts with a hook grip. That is so painful. It felt like it was going to pull my thumb right off the hand, but the thumb is the weak link. Now, I'm going to tell you a secret. If you want to really improve your grip strength, you remember those old clothespins, the alligator clothespins your mother used to hang the clothes out on the line with?
Yeah.
You get that, and you put about 10 rubber bands tightly over the jaw, and then hold the clothespin so one part is on your finger here, and just do this with it. Close. Do that 1,000 times, and you will you'll be like, I can't believe, because I do farmers walks, and that's what gets me through farmers walks, that I used to do those. Your grip strength will increase dramatically if you focus on making your thumb stronger as opposed to the rest of the hand. True story. Here, so Sean Watson says, Ronnie had the worst form I've ever seen on just about anything. Poor guy is paying for it now. Well, he's paying for that video that he I just gave it to my nephew. The Unbelievable. That video, he was 6 weeks out from the Olympia. He was carb And that's when he front squatted 700 pounds for reps. He was deadlifting 800 pounds for reps. Like, that takes a toll, because I have the same problem as him. It's not as progressed, but I have L4, L5, S1, and that's why I have an inversion table, and I hang from it every night before I go to bed, because I don't want them to get so compressed that they fuse. So I'm trying to keep them separated. But yeah, that poor guy. You're absolutely right. Very sad. So what about the negative, the eccentric? Do you do things to exploit that? Because I've heard you can get really strong when you focus on doing things for the eccentric.
It's I've actually seen some Brad Schoenfeld has written some, I believe, either studies or reviews about the eccentric part of the lift. The one where you're, for example, lowering yourself from the pull-up bar. You're stronger. Like it's a bit of a fun fact. Yeah, it's a fun fact. You're stronger when you're holding back compared to when you're pulling or pushing something. So definitely, I've heard some. I know eccentric training is used a lot for if you have tendon pain or joint pain. It can be used to treat if you have tendonitis in the Achilles tendonitis, for example. If you're doing this, what's it called? This toe raises. And you do it with a slow eccentric. It's some interesting research about how you can heal the Achilles tendonitis quicker.
Wow.
And maybe also you could combine that with a cluster set, to add more volume as well. So that's definitely interesting. I do it sometimes if there's like an injury to treat. But I know there's definitely I've heard some potential because you are stronger. And a lot of times, when you're doing a regular set, you're limited by by the concentric phase. You're limited by how much you can push or pull. You're not training your eccentric phase to the maximum. So it would be definitely interesting to see if you compared people who only did concentric or primarily concentric versus people who try to do eccentric training as much as possible.
So I have an AR. Oh, wait a second. I have an ARX machine. I'm fortunate to have an ARX machine at home, and I actually switched to using it just for eccentric because it does concentric and eccentric. But I'm doing concentric stuff at the gym now, and I like to go to the gym. I like to see the people. It's socializing, and I feel more motivated when I go to the gym because I'm one of those show-off ego guys. You talked about the ego. I'll tell you a story in a second. But when I train at home, I don't push hard on the concentric. So if I'm doing bench presses, I just kind of ride along with it. But then in the eccentric, I struggle and struggle and struggle. It's insane. That machine, it's a 25 horsepower motor you're fighting against. Every single rep is your 1 rep maximum at that moment in time, depending on where you are with fatigue. And it really takes eccentric training to a new level entirely that you can't do with weights. You can't do it unless you have somebody lifting them for you and then you're putting them down. And when we talk about ego, I just was talking to somebody about this. It's why I have so many injuries. I remember when I was at my peak strength, I had trained back on a Friday, and I came in on a Saturday just to do cardio. And I saw a guy, and I know I'm going to sound like a real douchebag, but this is the truth. And a lot of people will relate with it, but they won't admit it. And I thought, I'm stronger than that fucking guy. He was deadlifting, and I'm like, shit, I warm up with that weight. And I was talking myself out of doing cardio and going down there on the platform and training back with him because I knew I was so much stronger than him. That is complete ego. That's why I've detached and torn so many muscles, because I have always trained by ego. I don't anymore. I just don't. But ego gets you in trouble every time.
Also, I think everyone has a gym ego. It's just how aware are you of it? And now, like you're saying, you stopped doing that type of training because of your injury. So now you're aware of it, and I have it as well. Everyone has it. We're comparing ourselves to others. It's very natural. Right. But also, the ego can. It's so it's so easy to get injured, whenever because then you start to like cheat on the form. You're like, well, as long as I get the bar up and down, it's okay. But if you're doing it with a completely bent over back and all these things, then you're at risk. With heavy weights, you're at risk for permanently injuring yourself. And I know I have a friend as well, I believe, after squatting too much, and maybe with the wrong form, he went home, he sat down in the couch, and then he had what's it called in the spine when the discs dislocate?
Oh, wow.
Hernia, So he had he got a huge problem for that.
He was just sitting there and he felt it, right?
Yeah, that happened when he came home. Once he unloaded his bag, he went home, sat down in the couch, and after that, now he can't squat. He can't squat because it hurts so much. So I think it's important for anyone listening, like if you're doing heavy weights, you have a long life to live, and it's a shame to throw it all away because you wanted to impress the girl or anything. It's a shame because when I train now also, I have several injuries because I lifted too much and I wasn't prepared for it. And now I'm in the gym to be healthy and strong.
Right.
It doesn't matter, if I impress other people who are there, even though that voice might be, to some extent, will always be there. You have to sort of fight against the voice, because you can't, you're not there to impress others. You're there for yourself, to improve yourself. You're competing against yourself.
Craig Hollander says, I have to train with meticulous form due to multiple injuries, including torn tendons. Yeah. Those of us who have been around the gym long enough, unless you don't challenge yourself, and I'm not saying that my ego helped me challenge myself, but unless you don't challenge yourself, you don't know where the breaking points are. And but then there's guys like Mike O'Hearn, God bless him. He's going to be back on the show soon. I mean, Mike is in his 50s, I think, now. I don't think he did his so every year Mike used to squat 315 for whatever his age was. And the last time I saw him do this was like 40-something. 315 for 40-something reps, one after the other. I mean, that's insane. And Mike has never suffered, God bless him. I need to knock on wood. He's never injured himself. So there are people that pay attention to when they're making too deep of an inroad, and I believe all injuries are a result of fatigue and not executing the lift properly. I want to take a break, and when we come back, I want to talk. If I can inspire anybody to go out, if you squat and deadlift with considerable weight, whatever that is, 225, 315, whatever that is for you, you must get an inversion table. So let's take this quick break, and we'll be right back. Stay with us. There are lots of concerns about food supply today. That's why you need White Oak Pastures. White Oak Pastures will deliver food right to your doorstep. You don't even have to go out and be disappointed by shopping in grocery stores. The finest beef, pork, lamb, duck, and more can be found at White Oak Pastures. And now they even have seafood. And best of all, White Oak Pastures has a negative carbon footprint, which means that you don't have to feel guilty for eating your ribeye. Go to shrnetwork.biz/White Oak and use the code SUPERHUMAN to save 15% off. There have been no real breakthroughs in resistance training for over 200 years. Whether it's pulleys or free weight, they all depend on gravity and the angles associated with gravity's effect directly on the weight. All of that has changed with the ARX machine. ARX stands for adaptive resistance. The ARX machine uses a 25 horsepower motor. You are literally fighting against a 25 horsepower motor. So every single rep is your 1 rep maximum at that moment in time. But ARX leverages another technique that has been known to produce rapid muscle gains and strength. And that is, it leverages the eccentric or negative portion of the rep, which completely blows every other exercise and resistance training product out of the water. Go to shrnetwork.biz/ARX and discover the future of resistance training. I would easily say that I am the hugest proponent you will ever meet to doing anything that will improve the quality of my sleep. And that's because sleep is linked to just about every metabolic disorder we see in our population today. One of the easiest things you can do to improve the quality of your sleep is to get a pillow that can be shaped into the exact form factor that allows you to get your best night's sleep. And that is My Pillow. I've been sleeping with My Pillow for a few years now, and I can tell you that when I have to travel and stay in hotels, I don't get a good night's sleep because I don't have My Pillow with me. Right now, you can save up to 60% off of everything offered to improve the quality of your sleep at shrnetwork.biz/mypillow when you use the code SHR. Or you can call toll-free 800-889-4938. And remember to use code SHR to save up to 60% off of everything at their website. Never before has a product been so appropriately named as Botanic Tonics Feel Free. This plant-based elixir combines a variety of different effective compounds, all from raw plant materials that at different doses provide you with completely different experiences. A third of a bottle puts you in the zone and makes you very focused and is ideal for a non-stimulating pre-workout. It also has a mild analgesic effect for us older lifters who have soreness and little pains and aches that keep us from training as ferociously as we want. A half a bottle will create a mild euphoric effect that will allow you to forego consuming alcohol but still be socially lubricated and have fun. I have never had a product deliver on its name the way Botanic Tonics Feel Free does, and I won't ever be without it, and you shouldn't either. Go to shrnetwork.biz/feelfree and use the code SHR40 for 40% off your first order. I promise you, you will not be disappointed.
This is the Superhuman Channel, where we use oxygen for the power of good.
Hey, welcome back. Before I get into this discussion about inversion tables, which I'm a really big believer in, I want to remind some of you that this Friday at 2 o'clock here on Facebook, as well as Instagram, as well as YouTube, I will be discussing the launch of my new company and this product. We're doing a soft launch in December, a full launch in January. If you are interested in learning about the Gunleash technology and opportunities, and not just investing, but to actually get one, please check the so shrnetwork.biz/11-11-22 is a link to get there on Facebook. Those of you who follow me on YouTube, you'll see something there. But 2 o'clock Friday, I'm going to run through this technology because this is amazing technology that we have pioneered, and it did not exist before. And there were several huge roadblocks that would have derailed anybody else. But I was determined to make this happen because the Gunleash has the potential to remove 75,000 to 100,000 illegal handguns from being used by criminals. And I'll explain to you on Friday when we do this, and you can ask questions and all that sort of stuff. So this Friday at 2 o'clock, 11-11-22 at 2 o'clock, either here on Facebook or on YouTube, if you follow me there on YouTube. Okay. So one of the greatest investments I've ever made that I should have made earlier, was an inversion table. Have you ever used an inversion table, Adam?
I haven't tried it before. What do you use it for?
So it's a teeter-totter type of a thing. You step in it, you lock your ankles in, and then you roll it back, and then you're completely upside down, hanging from your ankles. Now, you have to go slow. Some people, when they first use it, they just maybe have a 15 or 20% tilt. And until you get comfortable with it, you can't just go right and hang from your ankles because you have to build some strength up in the muscles. Your body is used to gravity's force from the head down. When you hang from your ankles, the gravity is now pushing you in a different direction, and it lengthens the spine and it straightens the spine because the muscles, you gotta really focus on relaxing your abdomen, almost where you end up like a vacuum pose, where your abdomen is actually concave, and you feel it in your hips, you feel it in the gluteus minimus, you feel the muscle stretching, you feel the psoas stretching, and you'll start hearing your vertebrae pop, 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 pop. So you do it before bed. Most people lose, I don't know, half inch, an inch in height from the morning when they wake up to when they go to bed because of gravity's push on them downward. So by reestablishing those spaces in the vertebrae before you go to bed allows your spine to even relax more in sleep and lengthen. And you won't end up with compressions. You won't end up with ruptured discs. Oh, God forbid a ruptured disc, but even what do I want to call it? A complete rupture is a horrible thing. But nonetheless, it allows your spine to naturally go back into its original position before you put all this weight on your shoulders and squatted and deadlifted and all that. It will save you a lifetime of chronic pain. Especially if you are squatting and deadlifting 300 pounds, 400 pounds, you must get an inversion table. In fact, you don't have to buy a new one. If you want to buy a cheap one, you can go to your local Play It Again Sports or a sport, the used sports guys. They have them all over the country in different cities, and buy one for $80. That's what I paid for mine. I've got it for this one. I had one before this, but this one I've had for 15 years. And every night before bed, I go out there and hang. And I hang not for a ridiculously long time because you can. There is some evidence. I did a show with the Dr. Win Wenger many years ago, probably 13, 14 years ago. We talked about the things that damage the brain as we get older. And the brain naturally shrinks. And one of the things you can do to keep your brain from shrinking is invert regularly. So that's when I started doing it. But it's an inexpensive thing, and if you are one of these people who lifts heavy weights, it will save you a lifetime of pain. I guarantee it.
It reminds me a little bit of when you go to the gym, you can hang from a bar and just try to relax as much as possible. And sometimes you can feel your back pop a little bit as you relax the muscles. It feels very good, and especially after squatting, you're compressing your back. So I've done it sometimes, but I haven't tried this inversion table before.
It's insane. So there's an expensive company out there who was a sponsor of mine the first year I started this show in 2005. And his name is Roger Teeter, and he has Teeter's Hang-Ups. These are the best inversion tables. They're sturdy. You could never fall or hurt yourself in them. They're just amazing, but they're $300 or $400. And the one I have is like 80, and you can't fall out of it, but it can hurt your ankles if you're a tender person. But getting upside down regularly will save your spine. It'll save you years of distress. It really is amazing. I mean, we all spend our entire life with gravity's incident of pressure from pushing us down from the head down. When you get upside down, it's amazing. Blood flow changes. Some people say that after they invert, they can see clearer, and it's probably true because you're opening up these blood vessels. You don't have to worry about hemorrhaging because the cerebral spinal fluid is there to correct the pressure, intracranial pressure when you're upside down. It's like a shock absorber. When you go upside down, the cerebral spinal fluid pushes down harder and keeps the pressure inside your skull stable. So you don't have to worry about, I have an aneurysm, it's going to blow out. But it's one of the greatest things you can do for yourself. Here, longtime fan of the show, Thomas Whittingham says, I've been hanging since 1990. I've also been following Doug Brignoli's protocol for about 7 years now. No more heavy back squats or deadlifts due to L5S1 herniation. More about 10 years ago. See, so you can still build muscle, but you got to take care of your spine. Nobody thinks about it until they hurt it. That's when they go to the doctor, the chiropractor. Don't wait for that. Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah. And a good way, if I can add, a good way to be proactive about this is to use these cluster sets that we've talked about. In that you're protecting yourself before any injuries.
And Sean Wasson points out, I want to get a hip belt. I do want to squat again. I don't think I want to put a bar across my back anymore. I think I'm going to get one. You know, you can get they have some sophisticated hip squat machines, or you can just get the one with the pin and load it with 45-pound plates. And the leather harness goes around your waist, and you yeah. But I'm definitely getting one of these for sure, because I want to squat again. I do. Okay, so did we miss anything? Is there anything that you wanted to cover that we failed to cover?
I think we've covered the most important parts. Maybe again to a bit for the advanced lifters is that this is a great technique for also clearing the sticking point. If you have basically a sticking point is the part of your exercise where you can't push the weight anymore. So if you get stuck halfway through a bench press, then your sticking point is halfway. Or if you can't get the bench press off your chest, then the sticking point is on the chest. So this cluster sets that we've been talking about is that by doing high quality reps with low fatigue, it's a very good way to train your technique so that you're strong throughout the movement and you can clear whichever sticking points you have. You know, people have them in different places for different exercises, but it's mostly relevant for, you know, power lifters, Olympic lifters who are doing 1 rep maxes. At some point the bar will stop. So this technique is also very applicable for advanced lifters if they want to improve their lifting performance in competitions as well.
Craig Hollander got inversion boots. I saw a guy. I'm afraid of them because I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to get off. So the inversion boots, you put the boots on and they have hooks on them, and then you go into the squat rack or someplace like that where there's a bar across the top, and you hook on and you hang. But you've got to be able to do a pretty strong sit up, if you will, or crunch upside down because you got to grab the bar with your hands and take the hooks off the bar. And I've never gotten it because I've always been afraid to use that. But yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, you have to be able to pull yourself up, he says. Pull yourself back up. Exactly. Yeah, and getting your hands on the bar in the first place is a trick. All right, so look, the website is sci-fit, sci-fit.net. You can go there and read the article about cluster sets, and there's lots of other great stuff there. Adam, thanks for being here today, brother.
Thanks, Carl. It's been a pleasure to be here.
Take care. We'll see you soon. And I'm off the air tomorrow, but I have Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday shows next week. So we have 4 shows next week. Don't forget, share this show. You never know who you're going to help. A friend of yours may be stuck at a plateau, and they can't get past it. They can listen to this show. They can go and read the article. They can give it a try, and they'll thank you. Or maybe they won't thank you. Maybe they won't want you to know that you helped them, but help them anyway. All right, we'll see you Tuesday. And don't forget, Friday at 2:00, if you want to learn about the Gun Leash Project, come to my Facebook page. All right, see you later. Never before has a product been so appropriately named as Botanic Tonics Feel Free.